The targets are chosen randomly, and when your unit kills an enemy, it gains an XP, which will increase its firing rate by 10%, I think, and it can gain a level 3 times, so up to maximum of 30 firing rate is what you can get on a unit. Yeah, it was a bit of a mistake to attack a system where there are 3 planets with my 3 ships, because it's basically RNG dependent if I win right now. But yeah, looks like the RNG is on our side, and we'll win with 1 surviving troop. Now down here, okay, let's just watch until the end. Now, so you can see I've captured a planet. In a few seconds, my fleets will return into an active state, and yeah, here it is. It's a bit damaged, but yeah, it's alive. As you can see, the planets are empty. That means there is no garrison on them, which means if an enemy were to invade, there would be no defending troops, and the system would get auto-captured for free, basically. Now, let's see how planetary destruction works. It's same thing as invasion. Planets are represented by these cities, and the destroyers will just keep shooting until the city is destroyed, and then the planet will basically be gone. The damage does not persist, so if you abandon your bombardment and return, you will have to destroy the cities from the beginning again. From the beginning again. Uh, Production works like this. If you start producing something, your resource systems will start sending resource ships over there and start filling this bar up. And even if there are, even if the resources are completely filled, it still takes time for the thing to get actually produced. As you can see, the yellow bar signifies how many resources there are, and the blue is the production progress. The production progress stops when it fills the yellow bar. So basically you don't want to produce only resource or capture only resource planets or only production planets, because either you will have too many resources or too few to actually make use of them. So you kind of want to balance it, balance your the systems you capture. You also have, hmm, oh yes, the kinetic shields and the battle stations. The kinetic shields basically just add like 20 HP to the battle, and the enemy has to first destroy the shield before he can start damaging your ships. And the battle station is basically just a strong ship, immovable of course, which shoots pretty fast and has like a decent HP as well. As you can see, the system here got destroyed, and we cannot capture it, we cannot do anything at it, we can just move through. There's also this fog of war mechanic. You can only see systems and enemy. Now let's try to invade the enemy. Or looks like the enemy is invading us, so let's see how the battle works. So when 2 enemy ships are in the same system, they start fighting automatically. You cannot fight in travel. You can only fight in systems. As you can see, easy victory, and yeah. You can also retreat during a fight. I will show it right now. I will move my ships into attack position. Okay. I can press the retreat button, in which case there will be a countdown of 5 seconds where the enemy can still hit me, and then my ships will all retreat. Or I can click uh, oh, never mind. I thought you could retreat single ships, but looks like you can't. Well, let's just do a general retreat. As you can see, I can still get hit, but I will at least save the ships. Which is kind of important when you have like XP, experienced ships. You also don't want to be giving XP to your enemy. Now let's look how repairing works. I can send a ship. Let's send both of these damaged ships to this repair repair planet. As you can see, there's the HP bar starts filling up a bit, and when it reaches a full one of these squares, it basically finishes healing the square. If you move before it's finished, you won't get healed. And pop, that's it. So, the game looks pretty fun, right? It's nice, simple RTS with a bit of complexity. You know, a minimalistic RTS, decently complex, but still quite simple to compare to the 4X RTS space strategies that are out there. Uh, but why is it bad? Why does this make for a bad multiplayer game? Well, let me show you one planet. Uh, it makes actually for a pretty fun single player game. It's a fun single player single player game because uh, at least in the campaign, because you're always fighting stronger enemies. You know, you're a back underdog, so you actually have to use your brain to win. But and you can do like surgical strikes to take out the enemy's repair stations or resource structures or do scorched earth, but and do all of these fun strategies, right? And they are pretty fun, but unfortunately, the AI is lobotomized. Even the hardest AI just sucks. It it is just too stupid to be enjoyable to play against. Uh, even if it has like way more planets than you. You can just always out-micro it, always outmaneuver it, and it's just unfortunately a really bad flaw in the game. Like if the AI was better, the campaign would be way better, which is the best part of the game, and it would simply be far more enjoyable. It would produce far more interesting scenarios, because if the AI sucks, like, you don't have to use your brain to win, and that's not fun in RTSs, right? But why is the multiplayer bad then? If the AI is too stupid, wouldn't having two humans of equal skill fix the multiplayer? Fix the game at least in multiplayer? Well, you'd think so, but actually it turns out that since the game is minimalistic, it's actually pretty simple to come to find the optimal strategy, at least on a small enough map. And if you fight with somebody, even against a beginner, it will be a grinding stalemate. That is what the game will turn into a grinding stalemate. Let me show you a map. I played a few multiplayer matches. Unfortunately, it's not really a it is not really a not a lot of people play this game, so I only played like 5 matches or 6 multiplayer matches, but even that is enough to see the flaws in the game. Okay, Tempest is I think the best best small best small map. There was this really fun map, but I cannot find it. I think it was Tempest. Man, this is not the map, but it doesn't matter. I can show it here too. So let's just say both players play defensively, and first try to capture the planets on their side. They don't try any funky stuff, right? So I will basically have all of this, and this, and my enemy will have this, right? There will be borders. We'll be bordering each other on these 6 planets. Well, what happens then is yes. What usually happens then is you will be microing your ships. You'll put your ships, right, in these 3 systems. You'll put your majority in the middle. And then when you see your enemy move into a system to attack it, you move your ships there. And then he will see that. He will retreat with a little bit of damage. Then he will send his ships to repair. While they're repairing, you send your ships to repair, right? And if you think you have more ships, then you will try to poke the enemy, right? And it's basically this grinding microfest, which doesn't really test strategy, right? Because you're basically sending ships like this. And then you watch and see if the enemy responds in fast enough. You will look if you can beat the army. If you can, you just do nothing, I guess. You continue fighting. If you cannot beat the army, you retreat. You repair your ships, and you do it all over again. And because both players have the same amount of supply, neither player has the advantage, right? Now, there are there are other things you can do. For example, you can build defensive structures, right? You might say, okay, if I build defensive structures, I won't have to put as much ships on defense and will be able to attack. Well, that is true, except defensive structures take up supply, which means by investing into defense, you are weakening your offense, and the biggest problem in the game is you cannot destroy your defenses voluntarily. I cannot blow up this kinetic shield. It is here forever. Which means by building defenses, you forever cripple your offensive potential. This happened to me in one game. I forgot that defenses cost supply. We were in the stalemate scenario, right? And I just started, and I was like, I'm just gonna build defenses everywhere, because I have the resources for it, right? I'm at max supply anyway. Well, I did build like 10 defenses in my back lines, and then my army blew up in well, in those grind fests, sometimes you lose a few ships, right? And because I built all those defenses in the back, I wasn't able to rebuild my army because I didn't have enough supply, and I just lost because I built too many defenses. Like, can you imagine? It's just such a stupid design. Now, the supply isn't actually a hard cap. Well, you can go over your supply, but mm, when you're over your supply or at your supply, the the blue bar, the construction, starts progressing really slowly. So it's not really practical to build over your supply limit. You would rather trade your ships and then rebuild them again, if you have an advantage at least. Yeah, you would rather rebuild your ships instead of building over your supply, because that's more time efficient. Problem is, right, that if you... Well, that's the problem, basically, right? If you just build defenses, expand defensively, you don't try to interact with your opponent until you have captured your half of the map, which happens pretty much at the same time for both players, if both players go defensively. Then it becomes this huge grind fest that takes like 20 minutes to finish, even on a really small map. And, well, neither player basically... It basically gets down... If both players play perfectly, it's just RNG who wins. And it's not hard to play perfect when it's a minimalistic game, right? I'm talking about small maps right now, small maps. Now, what if you don't expand defensively then? What if you send one of your, let's just say, one of those bombardment ships into the enemy's half of the map to blow up few of his planets, maybe even a whole solar system, right? I did this once. First of all, if you blow up the enemy's repair center, that's GG. You will be able to grind him down, and because you can repair ships, that will just give you such a huge advantage. So, uh, yeah, you pretty much want to destroy the repair center. Problem is, the repair center is too important to be left alone, so it is always the first thing the enemy captures. It also helps because it can repair your invasion fleets and your planetary captured fleets. It means you don't have to build so many of them and can just focus on space supremacy. So basically, there's no chance you would ever be able to destroy this planet, which means you want to destroy a few planets in the other systems, which you think the enemy won't be capturing in the early game. So what happens when you destroy, for example, a planet on Shalim? Well, if the enemy plays defensively, and you capture Shalim, right, for example, and you blow up few planets here, then retreat, and the enemy will be like, oh, I guess I have lost like 2 planets here, but I'm still gonna capture it, right? And you have, in the meantime, used your other fleets to capture your half. So basically, it's the same scenario as the stalemate game, except the enemy has 1 or 2 less supply. And at that point, your victory is guaranteed because you can always have more ships than him. You can always attack, and eventually, you will win, even though you will just grind him out because of the small supply advantage, and there's nothing your enemy can do to come back, which is a flaw. There is no comeback potential in this game. It snowballs horrendously. A single supply, a single destroyed planet in the early game can win you the game, or lose you the game if you lost the planet, which is a huge problem, I think. Uh, the game is also, despite it being a minimalistic game, the game is also incredibly micro heavy. Every time you lose a fight, you want to select all your damaged ships and send them one after another into the repair center. You don't want to send all of them because then you will have too few defenses on the front lines. So basically always have to be on top with your repairs to win, grind out the enemy, and to not have your defenses weakened too much. Okay, and what if both players start with the offensive strategy? Well, then it becomes a bit more interesting. It didn't really happen to me because I played so few games, but I imagine that something like that would actually produce an interesting match where both players move their ships dynamically, try to outmaneuver each other, and it's actually a game of strategy, enemy prediction, and I guess micro too, a bit. Unfortunately, that doesn't really happen that often, and even if it does, well, it just doesn't happen that often. This is the biggest problem. And eventually, I imagine the situation would stabilize and it would pretty much become a grindfest again. Well, that is the case for small maps. Let's look at a bigger map. For example, mm, let's choose the expert AI, just so you can see how bad even the expert AI is. And let's pick the Sprawl, one of the largest maps. Oh, by the way, one of the bad things about this game is there's a very limited amount of maps. Not a lot of maps at all. The game would benefit a lot from just having a map editor. I imagine having custom maps could fix a lot of the game's problems. Yeah. So let's talk how the multiplayer works in a big map, because that's a bit different. As you can see, there's like 10 times more systems than in the small map. There are also creeps somewhere here on the edges, like neutral ships, I think. And so how does this game work? Well, it is way more dynamic. It is more dynamic. Unfortunately, because the game is minimalistic and, well, simply, this kind of game does not play well with large maps. First of all, there's still the micro problem, where you have to send all your ships to every planet to capture them. Then you have to send them to go repair. Then once they are repaired, you send them into another planet, and so on, right? Which is boring, annoying. It's just micro heavy, right? You'll basically be able to capture more planets just because you're more on top of your with your micro. You have better ship control, which isn't what RTSs should be about. Well, anyway, uh, what is so bad with this game, with big maps? Another problem is travel times. Ships cannot be always everywhere all at once. So when you send them here, for example, it's like it takes 40 seconds for the ship to get there, which does create strategy in the sense that when you send a ship somewhere, you're basically committing it to that side, and you cannot really move it to the other side. So when you have more ships on one side, you will be winning there. But if the enemy sends more ships to the other side, he will be winning there, and it creates a bit of a dynamitism, right? Also, controlling two systems increases the travel between those systems. So uh, when these ships get here, like this, if I send one here to this uncaptured system and one here, which is approximately the same distance, you can see that it takes 40 seconds for the ship to get here, but okay, I don't know why it doesn't show the time right now, but eh, well, as you can see, it moves. The ship traveled way faster over here than these ships traveled over here. The speed boost is about two and a half, two or three times as much as fast. So one of the things you can do on this big map is again you can do the defensive approach where you capture all the important planets and then all the neutral planets inside of your half of the map, and then you start basically pushing into your enemy, building defenses and such. You can also, because it's so open, send one of your destroyers, or maybe even a whole fleet, into the enemy's side to try to scorch his planets, scorch Earth and such. I played on one of these big maps only once, and that's pretty much what happened to me. I was just casually capturing all the planets on my half of the map, and then I see the enemy, right, push his army, push his fleets into my side, and he was basically capturing this whole cluster. He captured the production, he captured the resources, he was sending everything here, while I was just capturing slowly on both sides. Now, because I was split, I had split my attention, the enemy was basically able to overwhelm all my forces on this side, and well, at that point, he had more resources, more production, more ships, and there was nothing I could do, basically. It's just that on these big maps, it's pretty much just RNG on who wins, because it all depends on how many ships you commit on one side or the other. Then both sides meet, you see who has more ships, and the guy with more ships basically just wins the game, cause uh, yeah, because he just played better, I guess. Because he just decided to do an opening which counters your opening. One interesting feature is that your resource planets can get blockaded. So basically when an enemy controls your system, the resources cannot move through that system. And when it's resources can only move along your blue lines, by the way. So if the enemy would capture, for example, this system, my capital, or would just fight there, so it's blockaded, my resources would not be able to travel to this production planet, and I would not be able to produce any units, which is basically what happened to me. I was fighting. I had like 5 ships. He had 6 ships, and so he used his one extra ship to blockade me. Or no, I think he used all of his 6 ships to to blockade a planet, and I was unable to attack it because I only had 5 ships. So I wasn't able to produce more units. So I basically lost, right? And my other ships were just too far away, and it took like a billion years for them to get back here. And by that point, his reinforcements have also arrived. So I was basically forever at a disadvantage. I was unable to produce anything, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So that is why the multiplayer in this game sucks. It's just incredibly opening dependent. Victory is incredibly opening dependent. The one who simply randomly chooses the opening, which counters his enemy's openings, will win him the game. The game is also incredibly grindy because a lot of stuff just depends on the RNG. If you have same like same army sizes, and then it's just you just do the retreat, battle, repair cycle until somebody just wins by RNG, right? Which is incredibly boring and annoying. The uh, defenses taking supply. You might say, oh, it disincentivizes defense because defense now costs a lot, not just resources, but also supply. But it's actually the opposite. If I build defenses on one of my side, it frees up my ships to attack, for example, on the other side, right? It already costs a lot of resources, so it's already an investment, a big investment. So if I am allowed to build defenses, I am allowed to concentrate more ships on one flank, and then I can feel free to attack. But if defenses cost supply, by building defenses, I actually make my army smaller, and then I am not able to attack, despite investing in defenses. Now, how could this game be fixed? Well, one, this style of game lends itself more to the campaign than multiplayer. I found the campaign to be enjoyable despite the AI being like incredibly weak. Uh, like as you can see, this is a master level AI, and I have not seen a single enemy ship. I have not seen a single enemy ship. Like an enemy would already have conquered me a long time ago. Uh, anyway, yeah, the AI just sucks, right? It's a bit better with how many planets, how how more just stuff they get in the campaign, which balances out a little bit, but it's still super easy to just beat. Uh, Most of the time you can even just rush their capital planet and just win that way. Uh, it's just the AI just needs to be better. That's one flaw of the game. Number two is some of these maps are just too big. Like nobody wants to play a minimalistic game across the whole galaxy. So just focus more on smaller maps, smaller issues, and such. Number three is probably the fog of war, right? The biggest problem is the enemy can see what you're doing, or rather, because you don't know what the enemy is doing, uh, you cannot counter what the enemy is doing, which will basically result in the opening dilemma. Because you don't know what opening the enemy is, and because scouting isn't really possible in this game because of the long travel times and the huge commitment of these ships. Like one ship is pretty valuable, so you can't really like send your ships into your enemy capital to see what he's actually doing. Basically, you cannot respond to your enemy before it's too late. And when it's too late, you have already lost. So either you would need some scouting options or just remove the fog of war altogether. So it's more of a decision making game than a than just a rock paper scissors game, which is basically what the game is. Now the fighting among the ships is simple, but I think it's all right, I suppose. The game isn't really built for multiplayer, is it? Like there aren't really that many actual interesting decisions you can do, because it's basically just more ships beats less ships, and That's it. There's nothing more to it. That format does work really well with single player games. Solar Max, for example, a good old classic Flash game about space battles, where you only have one kind of ship, and your planets produce ships, and you want to capture more planets using more ships. The AI is all right there, because the game is even more simple and I can do it right. And the campaign is amazing. It's one of the best games I've ever played. And it even has an even better sequel, Solar Max 2. It's one of the best games ever made. One of the best Flash games ever made. And it doesn't even have multiplayer. It's a minimalistic RTS. And it has really fun. The campaign is just amazing, right? It's just single player only, and that is what this game should have probably been. Because you can't really make an interesting strategy using using something just as simple as this. Uh, yeah, there's just the game simply lacks something, right, for multiplayer. Uh, yeah, and that's basically my insight on why this game is a bad multiplayer game and how it could have simply been better. I really like the minimalistic design. I really like the ships, like how you can destroy planets, you can capture planets, and you can fight for space supremacy. But unfortunately, in practice, they just didn't do it well enough, and they really just messed it up with the AI. Like if the AI would have been better, at least you could have a fun campaign. But yeah, that's basically it. Thanks for listening to my rant about this game. Evil out.